There's a wonderful pattern in Jewish ritual where we alternate, actually we juxtapose moments of deep sadness and moments of great happiness. So you have, for example, Ta'anit Esther, which is a day of fasting, juxtaposed against Chag Purim, which is a day of goofy rejoicing. And you have Yom Kippur, which is juxtaposed a week or so later with Simchat Torah. And you have these juxtapositions, these very strange juxtapositions. One of the most remarkable of these juxtapositions is the modern one. There's two of them, actually. First is the idea that Yom HaShoah, the day that the Jewish community commemorates the Holocaust, is just a week before Yom Ha'atzmaut. So the two holidays representing the two cataclysms of the 20th century are juxtaposed one against the other. And in Israel, what happens is this day is quite remarkable. The day today, which was up until sundown, was Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZikaron is the day in Israeli society which commemorates all of those who fell in battle, and I guess more recently those who were taken by acts of terrorism. And it's a very, very, very somber day in Israeli society because every family in Israel has been touched in some way. Because everyone has a child or a brother, a son, a mother, a father, a friend. Everyone has someone, a teacher, a classmate who fell in battle, fell in defense of the country, or was taken in an act of terrorism. And so the whole country stops. We don't do this in America. We don't have any day that's like this in America, where the whole country stops. There's a siren sounded in the morning, and literally traffic stops, freeway traffic stops, buses stop, everything stops, people get out, they stand at attention for a few moments, and then they go about a whole day of remembering. Cafes, restaurants, clubs, cinemas are closed. People go to the cemetery. In large numbers, they go to the cemetery. There's a tekes in every town. There's a ceremony in every town to remember those who fell. If you go to those cemeteries, so it's a powerful experience. Even if you go to Har Herzl, for example, which is the big national military cemetery, and you just walk the rows, it's organized chronologically, more or less. So you walk the rows of those who fell in the War of 1948, and those who fell in 56, and those who fell in 67. And the thing that strikes you is how young they are. The majority, the vast, vast majority of those graves are young men and women taken in their 20s, some in their 30s, but most of them in their 20s, some in their teens. Kids in the beginning of life who gave their lives to defend a dream. And the sadness that you feel just walking that and imagining all of that, all of those lives, all of those dreams, all of the tears, all of the potential lost, all of that death taken from the world, taken from the Jewish people. And taken from the Jewish people, a generation after 6 million are taken from the Jewish people. It's a very, very somber thing, a very sad thing. And this day is a very serious day in Israel. And then what happens again is that late in the evening, as soon as the sun begins to go down, there's another siren. And the country magically transforms from Yom HaZikaron to Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is a day of unbridled celebration. Just unbridled, unrestrained celebration. Israelis, as you probably gathered, are rather political, but one day a year they're not political. One day a year everybody can celebrate together. Everyone can enjoy together, and it becomes a wonderful day of celebration. When I was a student there many years ago, did they still do patishim? Yes? So you have ever seen in toy shops, they have these, they're getting bigger. They make the little plastic hammers, and the hammer head is a little squishy thing that when you hit it, it goes squidgy, squidgy. It doesn't hurt, but it just, you can feel it and it goes squidgy, squidgy. So everyone has patishi, they call patishi the hammers, right? And you walk around bashing perfect strangers on the head with these, and it's a game about who you can do. We were standing on a street corner in Jerusalem, some friends and I, and there was a little old lady there, a small, helpless little old lady who spoke very heavily Yiddish-inflected Hebrew and asked us, "Wus we can help her across the street?" So we took her by the arm and we helped her across the street. Halfway through the street, she stops, reaches into her coat, pulls out this hammer and goes, pow, 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 and then runs away. Right? Policemen stop you and bash you on the head. I mean, it's just that kind. It's just, where did they get this custom? Yeah, just what? It's a kavod. Yeah, she says it's an honor to be smashed on the head by a policeman. But it's just crazy, crazy fun that one day all of the politics and all of the struggles and all of the dichotomies, as we saw in the other room, and all of the dialectic can be put away, and we can simply celebrate the joy of having a country, the joy of Jewish recovery and sovereignty. And that's what tonight is. So tonight we're going to recreate this in just a moment. A little bit of Yom HaZikaron, a memorial moment, and then a little bit of Yom HaAtzmaut, a moment of celebration. Would everybody please rise? Hail, Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamrumim, Hametzei Menucha Nichona Al Kanefei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Mahirim Lenishmot Chayalei Tzeva Hagana LeYisrael Asher Masru Nafsham Al Kedushat Hashem V'al Kibush Haaretz Ba'al Harachamim Yastireim B'Seiter Kenafar Le'olamim V'yitzeron Mitzeron HaChaim Et nishmoteihem Adonai Yehu nachalot
Chatam Biganei Eden Tehei Menuchatam Ve'yanuchom Shalom Al Mishkebotam Ve'nomar Amen.
Please be seated. November 29th, 1947, the United Nations voted for the partition of Palestine into a Jewish and Arab state. The British pledged to leave Israel within 6 months, and they scheduled their departure on the 14th of May, 1948. The day before, Ben-Gurion called a council meeting of the governing council of the Yishuv to decide whether or not to declare independence. Tremendous pressure was exerted upon him by the American and many European governments not to declare independence because they were afraid of the coming Arab invasion. The debate on the Yishuv Council waged all night long, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the vote was taken, and the vote was 6-4. That's how miracles happen in the world, by a vote of 6-4. By a vote of 6-4, it was decided to declare independence. Then they began drafting this Declaration of Independence. It was Jews, after all, and they were mostly lawyers. So they went through 10, 12 drafts, and finally, the last man, Moshe Sharet, was the one who had it. He fixed it. And then it was his obligation to bring it to the place where the ceremony would take place. They only wanted a few dozen guests. They told everyone else it was a secret. It would meet in the basement of Mayor Dizengoff's house, which was a concrete reinforced basement, and there was only room for a few dozen people. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there were 1,500 people at the place, and all of Tel Aviv stopped. Sharet got into a cab and tried to get across town to bring Ben-Gurion the document, and the cab driver said, "We'll never get there. Something's going on that side of town, and the traffic is impossible." He says, "Yes, I'll tell you what's going on. We're about to declare independence, and this is the document." So they got out of the cab. They held down a cop on a motorcycle. The policeman put him on the back of the motorcycle, weaved through traffic, and got him there by the 4 o'clock deadline. At 4 o'clock, the microphones came on, and David Ben-Gurion read this Declaration of Independence. Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here their spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. Here they first attained to statehood, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave to the world the eternal book of books. After being forcibly exiled from their land, the people kept faith with it throughout their dispersion and never ceased to pray and hope for their return to it and for the restoration in it of their political freedom. Impelled by this historic and traditional attachment, Jews strove in every successive generations to reestablish themselves in their ancient homeland. In recent decades, they returned in their masses, pioneers, immigrants coming to Eretz Yisrael in defiance of restricted legislation and defenders. They made the desert bloom, revived the Hebrew language, built villages and towns, and created a thriving community controlling its own economy and culture, loving peace but knowing how to defend itself, bringing the blessings of progress to all the country's inhabitants, and aspiring toward independent nationhood. It goes on for some paragraphs, and then he concludes. On 29 November 1947, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution calling for the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael. The General Assembly required the inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael to take such steps as were necessary on their part for the implementation of that resolution. The recognition by the United Nations of the right of the Jewish people to establish their state is irrevocable. This right is the natural right of the Jewish people to be masters of their own fate like all other nations in their sovereign state. Accordingly, we members of the People's Council Representatives of the Jewish community of Eretz Yisrael and of the Zionist movement are here assembled on the day of the termination of the British mandate over Eretz Yisrael, and by virtue of our natural and historic right and on the strength of the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly, hereby declare the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael to be known as the State of Israel. 14 May 1948, 4:11 p.m. Jewish history changed. And so we pray all together. Please rise again.
Avinu שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הגן, הגן עליה, בברת מעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה, עליה, סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ואמיתך לראשי השריה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך. אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Avinu Shebashamayim, deliver them and crown their efforts with triumph. Avinu Shebashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo. Bless this land with peace, O God, and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen, Amen. Avinu Shebashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, Barech et medinat Yisrael, Reshit tzmichat geulatenu. Hagein, hagein aleha, bevrat, bevrat chastecha, ufros aleha, aleha, sukat, sukat shelomecha, venomar amen, venomar amen. כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומיה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון סופיה. ולא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Thank you. Please be seated. Yes, what are we doing now? Passing this stuff out? Yeah, let's move it. Let's do this. I'll introduce Rachel. You guys move all this stuff. Hag Sameach. Hag Sameach is the one time of year you don't have to be political. You can just say Hag Sameach. It's a wonderful thing. As they're getting the room set up, I'd like to introduce our scholar. Rabbi Shulweiss taught me a long time ago that the most precious thing in the world is to find great teachers. So some time ago, we met Rachel Korazim. We met her first at Yad Vashem, actually. She gave a talk to a group of our members of the synagogue who visited Yad Vashem, and then I met her again at the Hartman Institute, where she's one of the most popular teachers there. And then last year, she taught for us again, and Alana and I rushed up to her last year and said, please come back and spend some time with us. So Rachel is going to be our guest teacher, our scholar for this weekend. She's going to teach tonight in a few moments. And on Shabbat, I want you all to come back on Shabbat. Or if you'd prefer, you can just stay in the seat you're in. Just don't leave. Because on Shabbat, we'll have Torah study at 9 in the morning, and then at 9:30, 10 o'clock, you can either go to the library minyan in one room or the Neshama minyan, and Rachel is going to be speaking to the Neshama minyan about women's voices in Israeli poetry. And then after lunch, she's going to come back and speak to us again about the dialogue with God in Israeli poetry. So we have several opportunities to learn with her this weekend, celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut. Rachel Korazim is one of the leading Israel educators in the world and has done remarkable work with our schools here in Southern California, bringing our kids close to Israel. And in my experience, she's the most passionate and insightful and deep interpreter of Israeli literature, simply the best teacher of Israeli literature in the world. And so it's a great pleasure to welcome Rachel back to Valley Beshalom.
Rabbi Feinstein, all I need to do is live up to that,
That's
right?
all you have to
yeah,
do, right?
No pressure. Chag Sameach, good evening, Shalom Chaverim. Many years ago, when I was in Shlichut, being an emissary for the Jewish Agency in Canada, I have discovered, just by coincidence, that one of the things I love the best to do for myself, and that would be to read Israeli literature and poetry, was helpful for many of my friends. They are Canadian Jews, French and English speaking, to get a window into Israeli society that most other venues do not offer you. As one of my students at the time back in Montreal, 1985, reading with us in a large Chavruta Israeli poetry, said to me, Rachel, you don't understand what this is doing for us. And now, being the Sabra that I am, she says, so what's the big deal? I grew up with this literature, I'm not that excited. And she said, no, Rachel, you don't get it. What are the three venues that we Jews of Montreal have to learn about Israel? And she said, first one, Slicha, Rabbi, is Israel from the pulpit. It comes Parashat Lech Lecha or whatever, so the rabbi will address. Beautiful, deep, not very contempt. Then comes Israel of fundraising. The more miserable we are, the better it works for fundraising. And then comes Israel of the media, and that has not changed since the 80s. What are the two main gates for Israel to get into the media then and now? Either we bomb somebody or they bomb us, right? And then the woman says to me, by reading Israeli literature with us, It's as if you have invited us into your own living rooms and allowed us to listen to the intimate conversation that you guys are having with each other while we are not listening. I think it's a nice description what I try to do. Invite you into the intimate Israel discourse. I've listened while we were having classical Israeli food for Yom Ha'atzmaut sushi outside, and I heard some people speaking with an accent very similar to mine. So therefore, and because of them, I made sure that all the texts are there in Hebrew as well for you, because Israelis tend to get very nervous if they have to read Israeli poetry in English. But we are going to discuss it in English nevertheless, okay? A few years ago, not as long as my Montreal experience, I was really privileged and honored to be asked to come and teach at the Shalom Hartman Institute, which is where lay people as well as rabbis come to study together, to read together. And at Hartman, they mainly look at their own scholars, mainly at classical texts, and the door was open for me to bring in some modern texts. So you know what happens at Hartman? Well, you don't know, unless you start coming, which I highly recommend. But anyway, at Hartman, the powers that be, the council, the board, whatever, they decide on a theme for the summer. And then they send it to us, to all of us scholars, and then we get a few months to prepare. Like long-term planning, Israeli, 3 months, okay? That's very long-term planning. Last year, we got a topic in February or March, and it was called Time for War, Time for Peace. Little did we know. You remember, Rabbi? I taught my first session on the day they found the bodies of the 3 youth. I taught my second session on the day of the funerals. And by the time we got to the peace poems, the sirens were already there. It was one of the hardest, weirdest atmosphere to teach these topics, but then, hard and complicated and complex is actually just Israeli. So we are today going to look at the last session of a series of looking at war and peace, a little bit adapted for our needs today. I'd like to say for an opening statement that as they say about when all is said and done, there is much more said than done. The same about themes of war and peace in Israel. There is much more war poetry than there is peace poetry. And even that, I would like to question whether it is really peace poetry or just hope and sometimes yir'ah, trembling in front of the idea of what it will look like. In the early years of Israel, when we were thinking that all we need to do is just declare the state, just win that first war, or maybe the second, and then after that everything will be fine, we had a mass of hopeful end of war, good times kind of song. There are enough Israelis in the room to help me even to illustrate with a few. Okay, so the classical from the 48 was Ha'amini yom yavo טוב יהיה מבטיח לך לחבק אותך אבוא. And we translate. It's not our party. It's not your party. It's everybody's. Trust me, says the guy in Israeli, they know everything. The day will come, I'll hug you, and everything will be fine. Okay? On another one, ובכביש שעבר שאגו בחורים כי נגמר, הן אפשר שיהיה זה פשוט כבר מחר. It may be possible that it will happen tomorrow morning, just like Mashiach. You think Israelis are secular? Listen to their language. It's classical, traditional Jewish language. Just like they're waiting for Mashiach. Be ready, it's coming tomorrow. Then we went ahead so sure of ourselves, and we knew what will happen tomorrow. מחר, כשהצבא יפשוט מדיו, ליבנו יעבור לדום. Tomorrow, when the army will shed its uniform, our heart will stop still, and then, wow. And then it still didn't come. And there was another war. And we said, אני מבטיח לך, ילדה שלי קטנה, שזאת תהיה המלחמה האחרונה. It's not our party. Can you listen how the tone has changed from the ra-ra machar to I promise you, my little one, this is going to be the last war. But the tone was very, very different already. Okay? So today, I don't want to take you to those fields of bravado. I want to walk with you together through a more complex looking at what peace looks like. We'll have some music, but we will start with some non-music poetry. By the way, your first lesson in Hebrew tonight, in case you haven't started your ulpan yet, is that in Hebrew, we do not have separate words for poems and songs. They are all shir. A poem is a shir, and a song is a shir. So if fastidious teachers of school want to tell them apart, they will say shir zemer or shir sefer, a poem for a book or a poem to be sung. And then we go ahead and take all our poems from the books and set them to music and sing them. Are you aware of that Israelis sing their poetry? That we set beautiful poetry? And we even have the chutzpah to set your poetry to music. But about that, some other time. Okay. We are going to start with the issue of complex images of peace and hope. By now you all got your texts. And we are going to Yehuda Amichai. And our first poem is Wild Peace, or in Hebrew, Shalom Pere. Shalom Bar, like wildflowers, Shalom Bar. Yehuda Amichai, one of the most important poetic voices of Israel, was born in the year 1924, starts writing in 48, and the first collection of his poetry appears in 62. So until 62, we actually do not know that Amichai started to write in 48. But by 62, when his first book appears with an extremely original name of Poems, Shirim. So Yehuda Amichai poems, 1948 to 1962. And the one we are reading from there is this one, okay? So let's listen very carefully. לא זה של שביתת נשק, אפילו לא של חזון זאב יגדי, אלא כמו לב אחרי התרגשות, לדבר רק על עייפות גדולה. Not the peace of ceasefire, not even the vision of the wolf and the lamb, but rather, as in the heart, when the excitement is over. Amichai was never too shy to make erotic references. So feel free to read that one in it. He is making an erotic metaphor. What will feel like when peace will feel like when it comes? Just when the heart is still excited, it's still like trying to calm down after the big excitement. And you can talk only about great weariness. I know that I know how to kill. That makes me an adult. Listen to that. I know that I know how to kill. That makes me an adult. A lot of Israeli poetry deals with the issue. Coming of age is going to the military. Growing up in Israel is learning how to kill. And my son plays with the toy gun that knows how to open and close its eyes and say, Mama. Toy gun. A piece without a big noise of beating swords into plowshares, without words, without the thud of the heavy rubber stamp. Let it be light, floating, like lazy foam, a little rest for the wounds. Who speaks of healing? And the howl of the orphans is passed from one generation to the next. As in a relay race, the baton never falls. Let it come like wildflowers, suddenly, because the field must have it, wild peace. Flow with Amichai. Can you see how the rah-rah of the early years is gone? He does not rely anymore on the stamps and the agreements and the ceasefire contracts and what have you. In Amichai's vision of the peace, is something that will come after big excitement and just will be weariness and laziness and foam. There is a sense of softness. Your second stanza is in total juxtaposition to your first, which is about learning how to use a gun, and a mockery of a gun that you play with as if it was a doll, like our kids play with guns as other kids play with dolls, and then moving into that softness that he cannot really imagine. And then I think if Amichai had lived, he died in the year 2000, to use the language that we would use today, don't you think that he would somehow integrated in the last stanza the word organic? Only they didn't say organic in the 60s. Only we do. So he uses a much more beautiful metaphor. He just wants for peace to somehow grow out of the land naturally, like wildflowers, just like that. Because the field must have it, because the rain came on time, and the flowers will grow. So this is a pretty sort of halfway image of Amichai, of what peace may look like. And to me, unfortunately, it doesn't come across as a description of peace. It comes across to me rather as maybe a prayer for peace. Let it come. He hasn't seen peace yet. And he let go of all the promises of those early songs that we just quickly went through. And he is now switching into a mode of prayer. I need for all of you to be cognizant of that, because how many times have you spoken or talked with others about the great divide in Israel between the secular and the observant? And as if the realm of prayer belonged to one and the others had no contact with it. It's way more nuanced. And if you look at secular Israeli poetry, you will find the tone of prayer in it. Only the kind of prayers that Israelis would like to articulate, they find hard to find in a classical siddur. So they just go ahead and create them according to their need, according to their heart desire. Are we ready to turn the page? This is a toughie. It's still Amichai. It's a toughie. It's bitter. But you can handle it. If we wanted to go all the way back again, with your secular Israelis who shouldn't know from such things, but they do, what is our classical image of peace, of the peace who people who knew what peace would be like and told us in the book of Psalms, V'haya b'acharit hayamim, okay? And this man will sit under his fig, and the other will sit under his wine tree, and that will be the image of peace. What else do you expect from a nation of agriculturals in the land of Israel? And Amichai go back to that image and checks it, or as we say today, revisits it. And when I used earlier the word yir'ah, trembling in front of the idea, afraid to trust that it's here. So here are these people, האיש תחת תאנתו, טילפן לאיש תחת גפנו. There was already peace. And that the man under his tree telephoned the man under his fig. They could not relax. They were texting to each other. They were calling each other. It's not an image of peace. You take the image of peace and you put into it a tension that modernity had given us. When the day comes, we will not yet be able to relax. Tonight, they definitely must come. Assign positions, armor plate the leaves, secure the tree, tell the dead to report home immediately. You're imposing a classical military language on a biblical, natural sort of infrastructure, if you wish, okay? There was the biblical, this one under the tree, the other one under the fig, but they are imposing this fearful language of the need to defend yourself. And you are so scared that you want even to call the dead back home. You want to make sure that they too should live. The white lamb leaned over and said to the wolf, we're continuing with Psalms. Humans are bleeding and my heart etches with grief. I'm afraid they will get to gunpoint, to bayonets in the dust. At our next meeting, this matter will be discussed. The lamb and the wolf cannot relax either. They belong to some sort of a committee. And they have regular meetings to check all the time. And they're so worried because we, the humans who created their image as our symbols of peace, we are misbehaving. We are not letting them exercise that which we had imagined for them, and therefore they are taking over and feeling responsible for us because we couldn't manage it. All the nations united, and mark a little bit on the UN, okay, will flow to Jerusalem to see if the Torah has gone out. And then in so much as it's spring, they will come down and pick flowers from all around. This is a little bit of anachronism. And I need to open it and to invite you into this gate. It's such a fun remark. So we can see the nations waiting for Torah, that we know. But what is about picking flowers? How does that come into the image? So in early Israel, very early, I'm old enough to have remembered it. And I'm sorry to tell you that our fun thing to do on Shabbat when I was second grade, third grade, fifth grade, whatever, we lived in a suburb of Haifa on the Carmel. Don't think the fancy Carmel of today. This is the 50s and it looks different. And the Wadi and the hills are just like next door. And what do we do on Shabbat? Excuse me, we don't go to shul in my family. Slicha. We go and pick flowers. This is what you do. They're all smiling. Look at the Israelis in the room. They all remember. Kalaniyot, rakafot, poppies, cyclamens, narcissus. And then a few years later, they forbid the picking of flowers, of wildflowers in Israel. We have the law of protection of wildflowers in Israel. And the total exception of all other proper behavior rules in Israel that nobody respects. That was the only success of the Israeli system. Everybody respects the law of not picking flowers. So Amichai, I have stories about this galore, but I want to do other stuff today. I will tell you. When the Russian immigrants started coming in the 90s, they didn't know about that. And they were amazed by the abundance of wildflowers, and in Russia, it's absolutely okay to pick them. So comes the weekend or whatever, they go out and they pick flowers. And then the Israelis, especially the kids, very politely and nicely, you can imagine, are yelling at them, how dare you? And so not enough now they suffer for being new immigrants, now they're yelled at for picking flowers. And the Jewish agency, is Yonah still here? The Jewish agency, we had to include in the brochures of preparation before Aliyah to let them know that please remember that picking flowers is forbidden in Israel. לא ידעת שיש חוק או לא ידעת שהיינו צריכים ללמד אותם? Wow, you have been here for a long time. Wow, you have been here for a long time if you don't know that. Okay, so now there is a law. There are even songs about it. I can actually create a session about all this business of the flowers. Amichai here is actually revealing a secret. We know how old he is. We know how old the poem is. It's from way, way before. So for him, again, images of peacefulness, of relaxation. It can be the biblical one, like all the goyim are coming to listen to Torah. And also, and since it's spring now, everybody will pick flowers. And they will beat sword into plowshares, and plowshares into swords, and so on, and back and forth. Perhaps from being beaten thinner and thinner, the iron of hatred will vanish forever. I love this image. It's not so much halevai. What Amichai is saying, we will turn the plowshares, we will turn the swords into plowshares. Then, unfortunately, something miserable will happen and we'll have to turn them back. And then again, we'll put our trust in peace and we'll make plowshares again, and then again it will happen. It's not that we are so great. What Amichai is saying, just like in the previous poem, that peace will be the result of weariness, of the iron getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and it will reach one point that there will be no point in turning again and again, and maybe then. Amichai is not very hopeful. He sees a slow process like coming of age, was learning how to use arms. Aging maybe will bring peace just out of tiredness. Not very happy two images. So let us turn the page, and I'd like you to look at page 5. Now, we will be dealing with two songs/poems that have been set to music, the one on page 6 and the one on page 7, The Winter of 73. Both of them relate to one of the most difficult wars of the State of Israel, the Yom Kippur War. Both of them address it from the perspective of maybe after this miserable, disappointing, loss of confidence, huge number of victims, the surprise, the bravado from before, and the sadness of after, how will peace maybe emerge out of them? Hachita tzomachat shuv, the wheat is growing again, by Dorit Samirit, is a poem about a heartbreaking situation. It was created in Kibbutz Bet Hashita, which is in the valley of Jezreel, as you travel from Afula to Bet She'an. Are you with me? It's scorching hot. I hope they don't schlep you there on their summer tours. Please don't let them include that tour only in the winter tours. Don't go there in the summer. It's too hot. But in case you have done that, Kibbutz Bet Hashita is on your way. As you go from Afula to Bet She'an, it will be on your left, and to your right will be Mount Gilboa. And Mount Gilboa, remember, call back your premises, your biblical images, is the site when that amazing eulogy of Melech David after Melech Shaul and his son are lost in that horrible battle of Philistine. To this day, every Yom HaZikaron ceremony in Israel starts with Kinat David al Shaul veYonatan. I'm going to do a test just for a demonstration. Let's see how many recite with me. Hatzvi Yisrael al bamotecha chalal, ech naflu giborim, al tagidu begat, al tesapru bechu. We belong to the generation in which it was still kosher to remember by heart beautiful pieces of Tanakh. For some odd reason, it's not supposed to be good for you anymore. But we do. So facing that mountain in which a classical eulogy for the lost in battle was created, you now try to recite the whole of it. I'll help you later. Otherwise, we'll Google it. Okay? In 73, 19 of the sons of Bet Hashita fell in battle. 19 from a small, minute community of a kibbutz. Two beautiful pieces of literature were created. One of them is a new music for Netaneh Tokef, and the other is Hachita Tzomachat Shuv. The lyrics were there, and it took years until Dorit Samirit was happy with a music that was set to it. It is sung, we will be listening to it sung by Chava Alberstein. And I'd like you just to know we are in the theme of complex images of peace, that this is about that moment, like in Bet Knesset, like in Shul, when the people got up from the Shiva and you welcome them back to the community. Now, these people do not go to Shul, but they need a sense of transition, of inviting back to life the community, the families who have lost so much. So you need to let go, and we need to embrace reality. The war is over, and we look around, and our fields are still fruitful, and we need to take some consolation. It's a sad song. I'll help you by pointing out where we are in the English as we listen to Chava Alberstein. Give me 10 seconds to get there. Can you hear? It's not the same valley. You will not come back. From bitter soil.
העיריות עולות, ועל הדשא ילד וחלבו. מואר החדר ויורדים לילות, על מה שבו ומה שבליבו. זה לא אותו האמת, זה לא אותו הבית, אתם אינכם ולא תוכלו לשוב. השבילים השדרה ובשמיים עית, אך החיטה צומחת שוב. השבילים השדרה ובשמיים עית, אך החיטה צומחת שוב. וכל מה שהיה אולי יהיה לאט, זרח השמש, שוב השמש בא. עוד השירים שרים אך איך יוגע, כל המכאוב וכל האהבה. הן זה אותו האמת, הן זה אותו הבית, אבל אתם הם לא תוכלו לשוב. ואיך קרה, ואיך קרה, ואיך קורה עדיין, שהחיטה צומחת שוב. ואיך קרה, ואיך קרה, ואיך קורה עדיין,
שהחיטה צומחת שוב. I want to walk you through a few major ideas. First of all, we need to place ourselves in a rural community. In a kibbutz that is there, a kibbutz that is committed, that will continue to raise the children the same way, yet the blow is terrible. Like 19, every family is hit. If it's not your son, it's your student. If it's not your cousin, then as a nurse, it's the one you have treated when they had measles or whatever. In a kibbutz, you cannot escape the closeness. No way you could go from it. So Dorit Sameret starts by, first of all, it's like, you remember when we read about Avram going to Moriah from Beersheba after Kachet Bechincha, take your son, your only one that you love, la 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 la. And then Tanakh says to us that he went on the way from Beersheba to Moriah. It took 3 days. And what do we learn about the journey? Nothing. Nothing. All Chumash says is, Uvayom HaShlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayar et har Moriah. And on the 3rd day, Abraham raised his eyes and so Mount Moriah. Very much in that tradition, Doritza Meret starts by inviting everybody to raise their eyes. From the bowed heads, from the closing inside of the morning. She doesn't use the ritual text of inviting the mourners into the congregation. She uses a new text in the same tradition. Raise your eyes, guys. I know it's heartbreaking, but fields spreading far from horizon to end, the Kerub olives of Mount Gilboa. The valley closes into its evening with unprecedented beauty. Allow the beauty of it in your heart, if you will. And then you can even, maybe it's the parents, maybe it's the brothers, maybe it's the wives, saying, it's not the same valley. I raised my eyes, I looked, it doesn't look the same. My son isn't here. How can it be the same valley? It isn't the same home. You're gone and you'll never come back. The alley was the trees and vultures in the skies. From the bitter soil while lilies grow, again, the pull to the nature. On the lawn, a boy and his dog. Look, his son is playing out there. Life continues. The room is lit while night descends upon what's in and in his heart. It isn't the same valley. And then again you go through, and everything that had been may yet be forever. So now we are looking at time. There is a cycle of time that may bring some consolation. Look at the Hebrew for the biblical, Zarach Hashemesh Shuv Hashemesh Ba. It's not your colloquial Hebrew. It's not Boker Tov from the Ulpan. It's not Laila Tov, it's Hashemesh Ba. It's the biblical for the sunset. And we are still singing, the song still sing, but how can it be said? All the pain and all the love. And now the last, almost like ritual, you have gone through the process of mourning. You have rebelled and cried out, it's not the same land. And by the last stanza, a slow, painful acceptance. It is the same valley. It is the same home, but you cannot come back. So how did it happen? How does it still come about that the wheat is growing again? I think every single one of us who went through a process of mourning knows this sense that how can life be normal? How can they be driving the cars? How does the sun set? How does the sun rise if my beloved is gone? And Doritza Meret totally understands this cycle. And she says, yes, and life yet needs to go on. So again, I am not even daring to say it's an image of peace, but can we accept that it's an image of end of war? Can we just, let off the bravado of the early ones, everything will be fine and we will go on those sheep and the bows and then they'll be the last one? No. We're not there with Doritza Meret. Let us just embrace the acceptance of the end of war. Just that. And as if there is a dayenu at the end of the poem, Let's not rush too far. Just let's learn to live with the loss and embrace life again and open our heart to the fact that war is over. Years go by, and unfortunately peace did not come, as you well know. And in the year 1991, a new lyric music is created to relate to the same war. I'm sorry, Connie, you're listening to this for the second time, but from a different angle. Do me the quick math. Why is the year 1991 significant as per the Yom Kippur War? How far apart is 1991, maybe 1992, from the Yom Kippur War? 18 to 19 years. So what would happen in that span of time as per Israeli life cycles? The children who would be born after the war, and you know that we had a baby boom when the soldiers who did come back came back after the Yom Kippur War. So the war is in October. So by December, most of them are coming home. And then the following months, we have a baby boom. In my family, I am in a second marriage, so it's a blended family. My 2 children were born slightly before, in 70 and 71. But my husband's child, Ophir, was born in September of 1994. Do you need for me to do the math for you? He is a child of the winter of 1973. And Haspre composes for us this song called The Children of the Winter of 73. Now, I want to put you into a particular set of mind. It's classical throughout the Western world that when you write war poetry, you place yourself in the chutzpahdik position of talking for the dead. You know what the dead would have said. It's all over the world. In all war poetry, poets had taken the license, the liberty. When I'll do once war poetry with you, I'll show you how it works. Like for the Israeli, Hinei mutalot gufotenu shora aruka aruka. You know, the poet speaks as if he was one of the dead. It's a classic. And here, Haspre did something else. He puts the words in the mouth of the children of the living. Those who did come back, they are not the victims. They are the children of the parents who came back from the war. We'll do the same thing. I'll let you listen. Are you okay with listening to the music? Is that good for you? Or even if you don't know Hebrew? And I'll just help you with here and there a little bit of crutches to know where we are. So we are listening to the Children of the Winter of 73. And oy, oy, oy. And la la, la la la, yeah. Just a minute. What am I missing here? I'm sorry, I need a minute because I've placed it somewhere else and I don't find it in its folder. And I need to remember where I have it. So give me a minute and I'm going there. Got it. Nothing lost. We are. Can you hear the back? Can you hear? Bye-bye. Okay. If even the Israelis in the room cannot sing with me, I know that this is relatively contemporary. Let's look at the words. I'll start from the refrain, you promised a dove. הבטחתם יונה, עלה של זית. We are now listening to a dialogue between children and parents. The children who were born in the winter, they are the product of the winter of 73. They have been born in 74, so by 92, they are in the military. Peace had not arrived, they are in uniform. If we would have had the visuals, you would see that it's an army band singing it. So if you think that this is like an underground, samizdat, revolutionary song, no, it's mainstream Israel. It's not forbidden for soldiers to sing about the disappointment that they still need to be in the military while their parents had made other promises. So let's follow it. We are the children of the winter of 73. You dreamt us first at dawn at the end of the battles. You were tired men who were grateful for their good fortune. You were worried young women and you wanted so much to love. When you conceived us with love in the winter of 1973, you wanted to fill up with your bodies what the war took away. Listen to this language because these are already sort of ending adolescence. And they understand what they are talking about. Look at the language of to fill with your bodies. You came back from battle, you lost so much, you buried so much, and now you want to replenish. Now you want to do that which needs to be done with your bodies, so there is more babies, more people. You want to really to fill up what was taken away. When we were born, the country was wounded and sad. You looked at us, you hugged us, you were trying to find comfort. When we were born, the elders blessed us with tears in their eyes. I need you to look at the Hebrew. It's the second stanza, those who can. The third line of the second stanza. כשנולדנו ברכו הזקנים. This is not colloquial Hebrew. In colloquial Hebrew, you would say when we were born, Saba and Safta said so much. When you use the term Hazkenim, you're actually making a biblical reference to the elders of the tribe. So that's putting the whole context, this life cycle is those elders who maybe lost one of their sons and that now they are seeing a child from another one of their sons, and they are blessing with tears in their eyes. And you see the loss, but you see the sequence of life going on. They said, we wish these kids do not have to go to the army. Now that's a classical Israeli. If you want to go into the field of complex, painful reference to peace in the country, go to that sentence. Because in every generation, b'chol dor v'dor, Israelis are promising their children, by the time you are 18, come on. You think we are lying? We are not lying. We are honestly believe it. Only I'm the only Israeli who have become cynical by now. And I say that 25 years ago, I lied to my children, and now, very gladly, I'm lying to my grandchildren. I've reached that phase of maturity in Israel. Now, but it's not a lie. It's an honest hope. We do not have a clear vision of peace, but what do we have? We have this hanging, not even for a clear image of peace. Just look at the image. You will not have to go into the military. This is as far as we dare go. It's not about the wolf and the kid and all that, and the fig tree. No, we are far away from sounds. We cannot visualize it. All we allow ourselves is to say war will be over. The kids will not go to the army. And then, I don't know. We are not yet there. But don't worry, you don't have to be worried that you don't have an image because it hasn't arrived yet. And therefore, you go through the chorus, the refrain that says, Hiftachtem Yonah, you have promised us a dove. And the last line of that, you promised to keep your promises. You promised a dove. Can you hear that mom-kid conversation? Sonny, you know, promises need to be kept. And now it goes, Daddy, you know, you promised, promises need to be kept. So you have that language, like the very Haimish family language. And next to it, the sense of promise. And promise is an important thing with us. How do you think these lines are read in Israel? Kids turning to their parents and calling them to order and saying, hey, you didn't deliver. How is that taken in Israel? Is this song popular because of that? Is it criticized? Do people sing it with pain? Are they angry for the complaining kids? What do you think are the senses? Anger and sorrow. The same people? So first of all, you behave and stop complaining, and then I'm sorry that you are complaining? Like the mixture of both? I think you're absolutely right. By many readers, and I've spoken and I had chavrutot over this song with other people, I've heard a young woman with whom I said this to Rachel, you cannot imagine how angry my father is. Like, who promised you anything? What are you kvetching about? It's like the people in the desert, you know? We promised you that it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So stop complaining. And when God Almighty is in ultimate wisdom will see fit, peace will come. And until then, do your duty. So even if you think that all you can do with this song in Israel is like sing it with tears running down your cheek, in Israel, even that can become a cause for political debate. Even a song like this. Okay? Ilana, can I take, 5 more minutes? No, or more? Huh? 5 more minutes. Even 10? Okay. You'll give me 10 because I'm wavering whether to do the most debatable Shir LaShalom. Yeah, we should do that? Okay, let's do Shir LaShalom. I hope the sound is better. I do hope the sound is better. Let's see what happens, because I do want to give you that. Mamash, I do. Okay. The recording I have is from a Rabin memorial, and therefore you'll have some words of... Page 4. It's coming in a sec. יעקב רוטבליט.
תפילה נשארה גם כן פשוט תפילה, כפי שבוחר לשיר אותו הציבור הדתי. ובמקום הניחו להולכים, הנשארה זכרו. זכרו את ההולכים!
The purest prayer.
Hashem,
אפשר לחזק? We'll sing for you. לא ישיב מבור תחתית האפל, כאן לא יועילו לו שמחת הניצחון ולא שירי הלל. Come on, שיר לשלום, תלחשו תפילה. I'm going to stop this and you'll hum it in your heart and we'll give you a little bit of background. Now I have a special award, mainly at Israelis, but other can participate, to anybody who knows when this was composed. When was the famous, practically, apart from Hevenu Shalom Aleichem, the only other Israeli song that deals really with the bringing of peace? When was it composed? Give me a guess. Part one? 1967. Thank you, Yona. Anybody else? The Yom Kippur War, 73. Any other guess? Oslo Agreements, 93. No way. When? 95. Beautiful. 56? Standing in front of Har Sinai in 56. That's what you're saying, not peace. Okay. It takes a seasoned Zionist, ladies and gentlemen. You need somebody who was involved. Not 65, not 67, but 2 years later, 69. So at the height of the wow, at the height of we want it all, we have Jerusalem and Gaza and the Golan Heights and the Sinai and the West Bank, what have you. And we are kings of the world. And Moshe Dayan's best, most famous expression, Me'olam lo haya matzavenu tov yoter. Our situation had never been better. And it's better to have Sharm el-Sheikh without peace than to have peace without Sharm el-Sheikh. This was the language in 67. We were on top of the world. And the chutzpah of this young lyric writer, Yaakov Rothbild, that knows the after smugness comes the slap in the face. And when everybody's rah-rah fighting, says, hold your horses. And in the classical tradition of war poems, he puts his words in the mouth of the dead. So let us listen. Let the sun rise and give the morning light. The purest prayer will not bring us back. Straightforward, no mincing words, enough. Remember, after 67, we start seeing all that messianism in Israel and the Holy Land, and will come about the settlements, etc. So it becomes all, and Goren is blowing the shofar at the wall, etc. We all embrace a very sort of tone of religiosity. So Rothblit says, hold your horses, because none of this is bringing us back. Very realistic, tachlis Israeli, sometimes even too harsh. Mi asher kava nero, he whose candle was blown out and was buried in the dust, a bitter cry won't wake him, won't bring him back. Nobody will return us from the dead dark pit. Here neither the victory cheers nor songs of praise will help. Okay, so he's referring to all the expression of those beautiful bravado from Yerushalayim to the Shel Zahav to Sharm el-Sheikh, we came back to you, all those words, nah, won't work, won't do it. And therefore, nobody will return us from the dead dark pit. So sing only a song for peace. And now take a deep breath, we are in shul. Do not whisper a prayer. Now here we are on the verge of a problem. I get Rotblit. I'm raised in the same circles. But putting a line in an Israeli song that deals with peace that says, do not whisper prayers, what have you done in Israel? What have you done in the public? You have created a division. We guys on one side can sing it. You guys, well, it's none of my business, really. I don't care. Either you're with me or not. We had a tradition like that earlier. I will remind you, the Israelis will remember that no matter how early you came, because it's a song from the 20s, so you have to remember. It's Israel's most famous Hanukkah song, which says, Nes lo kara lanu pach shemen lo matza. No miracles happen. We did not find an urn with oil. We did it all with our hands. Okay? So you immediately have divided the state of Israel between those who can sing it and those who cannot sing it. For many a year, we sing it like this: do not whisper a prayer. Until that fatal day, on November 4th. You know what I'm talking about? 1995. The assassination of Prime Minister Rabin. Now, guys, be careful. Would army generals or former army generals embrace a song like Shir LaShalom? Would the earlier Rabin, the pre-Oslo Rabin, would he have sung this? No way. Arik Sharon, while head of the southern troops, Pikud Darom, had forbidden the singing of Shir LaShalom. Gandhi, while he is the head of Pikud Merkaz of Jerusalem in the central area, forbids the troops under him to sing this. Because you don't want to fight anymore. You want to raise your eyes from the aims of the rifle. You're a pacifist. You are like Americans in Vietnam. Lo tov. No good, will not pass in Israel. For many years, this is practically banned. And then come the Oslo agreements. You were right, the one who made the reference. Then come the Oslo agreements. Also a cause for dissent. Rabin is on that beautiful, to me, I'm left of center in case you didn't discover it by now. We go to that rally supporting peace and Rabin, and Miri Aloni, the one you didn't hear so well sang it, and you can see in the picture, and you know the story how when Rabin was shot, you have the text of this song stained with his blood. Why did Rabin need a page with the words? If it was a Palmach song, he would know how to sing it. Rabin did not know the lyrics. He didn't like this song. This is why he had the lyrics in his hand and then in his pocket and then in the museum. Now we come to the Rabin memorial ceremonies. And you cannot have the Rabin memorial ceremonies as a divisive thing. You want to include everybody. So what will Miri Aloni say before she sings? I am singing not Al Tilchashu Tfilah, do not whisper prayers. I am singing Gam Tilchashu Tfilah. Also whisper a prayer. So Miri Aloni, by I don't know what number of memorial for Rabin, is allowing herself the license, she's just a singer, to change the meaning and include kippah wearing Israel in Shir LaShalom. Big change, big change. We are not done yet. So sing only a song for peace, do not whisper a prayer. Better sing a song for peace with a big shout. Let the sun penetrate through the flowers. Do not look backward. Leave those who departed. Look at the Hebrew. Al tabitu le'achor hanichu leholchim. Let them go. Now that also is problematic. You're going to have bereaved parents in the Rabin memorials, because this is where we sing Shir LaShalom. Now it has become the Rabin song, after he had banned it. Okay? So what will you do? Listen, go on YouTube and listen to Miri Aloni singing Shir LaShalom, and she will say, I am singing Remember the Departed, not Hanichu la'olchim, Zichru et ha'olchim. So Miri Aloni, just the singer, not the poet, not the lyric writer, not the musician, as the symbol of the person who sung it on that crucial night, is leading Israel for some inner reconciliation before you're singing about eternal peace in the Middle East. Guys, try to look aside. There is a kippah-wearing man there. He cannot say, do not whisper a prayer. There may be a mourning parent, brother, neighbor, whatever. They do not want to let go. So I always teach Shir LaShalom to show you how we continue to converse with each other through text. And we create text that may be acceptable to more. We come from a very rah, anti-this, anti-that. And as a song becomes more mainstream, it will acquire a little bit of softness, a little bit of inclusiveness, and that happened to that. I never let you go without a smile on your face. So for that, you will turn from me to the one but last page in answer to the question. Okay, the one that has the two pictures on the bottom. I need to introduce to you Ronnie Somik. Ronnie Somik was actually born Ronnie Somech, which is a Sephardi name. And he came as a very young child in the 50s, and they were for a long time in a transit camp. You know how miserable those have been? Like tents or shacks or whatever, and how many children to one, and what happens when the rain comes and they are dripping. And what could a coffee shop look like in a Ma'abara? Like a miserable thing, right? Probably only acquainted by men, I'm thinking. I don't see many women in the transit camp sitting in a coffee. It's not like any coffee shop you have ever seen. Yeah, okay. Now, Ronnie Somech is taken under the auspices of Yona Volach, Zichrona Livracha, who will help him come into the mainstream of Israeli poetry. But in the first publication, there is a spelling mistake. There is a typo. And his name is spelled Somek, which means blush, rather than Somech, as in Somech Noflim, okay? And he actually likes it. So could it be that maybe it sheds a little bit the too Sephardi name of Somech and puts a question mark of maybe whatever, I'm an Israeli now, okay, whatever. But it doesn't stop him for going back time and again to those transit camp days. In reply to the question, when did your peace begin? So can you see the reporter? So finally Menachem Begin had signed this agreement with Egypt, and finally Rabin had signed this agreement with the king of Jordan, Hussein, and finally we have the Oslo agreements. So all sorts of poets and artists, whatever, interviews. So when did your peace begin, man? You know, whatever. So Ronnie Somek is sort of making fun of these journalists that will run after every celebrity and like, give me a break. Okay, so he takes them back to the Ma'abara, to the transit camp. On the wall of the cafe by the Ma'abara, they hung the hair of David Ben-Gurion teasing the wind. You remember those old pictures of Ben-Gurion with his hair flying? So, I mean, he's an adult now, and he's only recollecting memories of his childhood, and it's not even sure he can totally remember the face of Ben-Gurion. But what you do really remember is that flying hair that is teasing the wind. It's not the wind teasing the hair of Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion is important. He is teasing the wind. Okay? So in the Ma'abara, miserable coffee shop, they hung the hair of David Ben-Gurion teasing the wind. Next to it, in a similar frame, the donut face of Kulthum. Now you all know who is Ben-Gurion. Who is Kulthum? She is an Egyptian singer, the most famous of them all. Now I need honesty. Is there anybody in the room who ever listened to a song by Kulthum? 25 minutes every song, okay? So it's an acquired taste. You need to belong a certain group of the population, which is not necessarily the group of Ben-Gurion, okay? So you can see the atmosphere in the Ma'abara of the 50s, where the owner wanted to decorate. So he puts the two most important symbols of the time, Ben-Gurion for the state and Kulthum for our heart. Because we really, really maybe admire Ben-Gurion, but the one we love is that Arabic singer from Egypt, whose every single song is at least 25 minutes. Okay? Yeah. And they love it so. So next to it, in a similar frame, the donut face of Kulthum. It was in 55 or 56, and I thought that if they hang a man and a woman next to one another, they must be bride and groom. Ronnie Somek, probably 8-year-old, in the Ma'abara, having a vision of what peace will look like. Ben-Gurion hand in hand with Kulthum. Halevai aleinu bimhera beyamenu, Chag Sameach.